Hello everyone. Some time ago I came up with a model to help me analyze and understand some concepts on tabletop RPG design. I recorded a video in Portuguese, so I thought that I could record it again in English, maybe help a broader audience. And before we start, a disclaimer, there is nothing particularly original about this model. It's just that it helped me visualize and understand some concepts that I already knew, but organizing this information in this kind of model, it certainly helped me with the development of some of the games I was working on at the moment, and I still use it to this day when I'm facing with some problems and choices that I have while developing the game. So, what is it about? It's called the pressure model. Okay, so we have two circles in the middle and arrows to the left and to the right. How does that work? So in the middle, these two circles, they represent the action where the game actually happens. So when we're talking about the game, this is actually what happens, both on the table with the players and into the fictional world with the characters. So inside we have the fiction. So the first question, the central question is, what do characters do? So this question helps us understand what our game is about. It helps us understand what it's about better than asking what the game is about. So when you stop to analyze what kind of actions, what kind of things the characters do, you actually have an understanding of the premise of the game and the scope of the game. It doesn't have to do with the setting or the genre, but more with the perspective that we look at it. So if we take pirates, for example, this is a setting or ambiance, and the premise of the game can be discovery, exploration, and finding new lands, but it can also be intrigue and negotiation and politics. This is more or less what the premise of the game is about. And the scope of the game is the array of things that your game is able to explore. More traditional games usually have a broader scope, meaning that you can have warfare and intrigue and discovery. And indie games or minimal games, they tend to be a smaller scope, focusing on doing one thing right, and that's pretty much it. So when you try to answer what the characters do in your game, you're actually answering what your game is about. So you have to stop and think about it. When we imagine those characters in this fictional world, what are they doing? So outside of what characters do is what do players do? And I see a lot of confusion when people try to answer this question. What the players do is actually what they do at the table, what tools they have at their disposal. How is the interaction between the players and the mechanics? So what do players do? They roll dice, they manage resources, they make decisions together, they fill up tracks on a character sheet, they draw cards, they talk to each other, they compete maybe. So why does it help to answer this question? It gives you the opportunity for the first time to check if the tools you're offering the players actually help the characters do what they're supposed to do in a fictional world. So if you're saying that your characters discuss politics and intrigue, what kind of tools you're offering them to help them accomplish that? Do you have established mechanics for it? Do you have subsystems? Do you have rules? Do you have dice rolls? Do you have cards? How do the players interact with the mechanics to help achieve what you think the characters should be doing in the fiction? So this is the center of everything, but we have to move these things, otherwise we don't have a story. So how do we move characters and players alike? We have this first vector, or this first force, which is the protagonism. In the fictional world, we have motivation. What drives characters? What does the character want? the most? Why do they do what they do? If your characters are explorers, why do they explore? What do they want in the end? Sometimes your system is very explicit about that, and your character sheet even has a fill in the blank for motivation. It's part of one of its traits. Sometimes it's not, it's implicit, but it's nevertheless important to discuss. When your character is lost on what to do next, their motivation is going to show them the way forward. So it is important to define their goal, their drive. Why do they keep going in the face of adversities? So this is in the fictional world. In the mechanical world, we are talking about rewards. What does the player want from that experience? And what do they get for it? So if you want your players to engage in a certain mechanic and ask them to produce some kind of story together, you have to reward them. The most basic form of reward is character evolution or some kind of in-game currency. But it's not just that. But if you want some kind of behavior to happen in the table amongst the players, you have to think if your rewards are aligned with that. And although both arrows are in the same direction, it doesn't mean that they have to be the same thing. It's actually interesting when your character wants something and you as the player want something different. And this is very clear when we're talking about compels and fate, for example. Your character probably wants to solve all their problems without any hiccups. You, on the other hand, want a fate point. And in order to do that, you have to compel some negative aspects of your character. So this conflict of interest between player and their own character can be very interesting to explore in your game design. However, you have to consider if you're rewarding players for the things you want them to do in your game. Otherwise, your players will follow the reward, even though you wanted the story to be of another theme, of another feel. If you want a game about negotiation and you reward players for killing things, guess what? They're going to kill things. So that is protagonism. But this is one force. If we have nothing on the other side, players and characters would simply get what they wanted, and then you don't have a game. That's why we have antagonism. On the fictional world, antagonism is represented by obstacles. That meaning enemies, villains, monsters, the environment, or other forces that stop characters from getting what they want. In this moment, you have to think, what do the antagonists want in your game? They don't need to be people or monsters. It's just the driving force that is opposite to the motivation of the characters. When you have a conflict of interests, that is when drama emerges, right? Otherwise, if the characters have a motivation and there's nothing stopping them from getting it, they would simply do it. This obstacle is what gives life to your game, really. On the game level, we have what I call constrictions. Constrictions are the choices and limits for player action. You have tools, you have mechanics, you have your rules, you have your character sheet, but you have limits for those and choices you have to make. In a round level, you have a choice to maybe move twice or move and attack. That's a choice you have to make. When you're doing character evolution, advancements, you can specialize on a single aspect and be very good at it, but not very good at all the other stuff. Or you can generalize and maybe learn more skills, but you won't be as good in any of them if you choose that. You have resources that you can spend to do something but neglect something else. Those are all choices. And you also have limits. Limits show how far your powers as characters can go. You have a skill for jumping, but you can't jump to the top of the mountain. You have a skill of shooting arrows, but you can't shoot 3 targets at the same time. Those limits to the mechanics help players make interesting and dramatic choices every time they engage with the mechanics. So there you have it. If you're paying attention, all the red circles and arrows, they represent the fictional world. We have the characters in the middle, the most important thing about the story, and you have on one side the motivation of the characters moving them and the obstacles stopping them from getting what they want just as easily. And this moving back and forth is what creates the drama in the fiction. The gray circle and arrows represent the mechanics. What players do is how they engage and interact with the mechanics, the tools they have available, and they are motivated to use this because of the rewards they get, and they are limited by the constrictions the system presents. And here's the complete model. Here's the action in the middle, the most important thing, where the game happens, and protagonism, antagonism, pressuring this circle in the middle. That's why it's called the pressure model. Although it looks static, it's actually moving back and forth all the time during the game. And how do you use it as a game designer? Well, it's during game development, you have to check if those things are aligned. Do you offer tools for the players to do what their characters are expected to do in the fictional world? Do you offer rewards for the players to engage with those mechanics? The limits you present are there to contribute to dramatic choices and interesting paths that they take with their characters. Is it clear the motivations and the things the characters do in the fictional world? Are there obstacles that are interesting to overcome for these characters? Are there mechanics to provide tools to overcome those obstacles? So, as I said, there's nothing new in this particular model, but seeing this, everything put together in a visual way, helped me analyze my games when I'm stuck deciding if this mechanic should work this way or this other way. I have to remember, I have to remind myself, what do characters do in this game? What am I rewarding the players to do? What are the things I hope that come up during play? And this model helps me do that. And I hope it helps you do too. So here are my contacts if you want to talk about it. I'm available. I have a few games published. And I hope to see you soon. Thank you.